Hi, good morning. Happy Monday. I hope you're having a great week, that you're having a great morning. My name is Gina. I'm the founder of Babe Crafted. I'm really excited to do a Facebook Live this morning. I want to talk about 3 things I have learned since starting my own podcast. Of course, there have been many ups and downs since I decided to launch this project. Of course, I knew it was going to be a big undertaking, but it was something I was really excited about. I went into with as open eyes as possible, read a lot of articles, with different tips and insight in how to start your podcast, with your best foot forward. So now that we have officially launched, today is launch day, we have an intro episode live, and we have an episode live with Sheila Vasky of Vienza Creations. You can listen to the full episodes at babebehindthebrand.com, or you can go to babecrafted.com and click on our podcast tab. So these are my 3 lessons for you, and I hope that they're very helpful. If you have any questions or you have anything that you have learned along the way of starting your podcast, I'd love to hear what you think. So the first thing I have learned is how important batching has been. So I wanted to make sure that when we launched that we had several episodes ready to go in the canon, because I knew that once we hit go on launch day, time was going to move very quickly. So we had 6 episodes ready to go, fully edited and on the schedule. So what I did the week leading up to the launch day is I finished up our audiograms, which is those nice little squares you see that have the sound wavelength through them so you can hear a clip of the podcast. Got those ready, got the graphics ready, emailed our different guests to let them know, hey, here's your publish date. This way they knew what to expect and when they could do some shares. So that's been pivotal. So now that it's actually launch day, there's not as much scrambling. I've had a pretty nice rollout. So that's been really exciting. So I think it's really important to make sure that you work ahead and that you get as much ready as you can. I know it can be a little bit stressful as you're working on those big batches of content at one time, but it's just going to be a total game changer for you in your personal experience launching your podcast, and then also for your audience, so they don't have to wait as long in between episodes, because sometimes things can take a little longer than you expect. Sometimes, let's say, for example, you have a guest who's scheduled to record with you, and then something happens and schedule changes and you need to reschedule, or they need to. So you want to make sure that you get as many as you can recorded in advance. This way you can avoid going, too long in between published episodes. You can get them scheduled out ahead of time, and it's going to be a total game changer, lifesaver. So the second thing I've learned is to make sure that you get your hosting settled as soon as you can. I kind of dragged my feet a little bit on choosing a host and getting set up on that platform. I had read a bunch of different articles on, here are the different hosting websites for podcasts, and here is what's great about Blueberry, and here's what's great about Libsyn and Podbean and all these different ones. And I just figured, you know what, that's great. I've done my reading. I will put this on my to-do list and I'll come back to it. And I really wish I had gone through that process a little bit sooner, because I realized that it could take up to 10 days for your podcast to show up in places like iTunes or Apple Podcasts once you submit them. And I submitted mine the day after I got my hosting. And I didn't realize that it could take up to 10 days until, the middle of last week. So our podcast is not quite yet showing up in those search engines. You can only listen to it on Libsyn, the host we did choose, or on our website, which isn't a bad thing, especially since we only have a few episodes out right now. There's not a ton of, content to kind of sift through. So I think that, hindsight is always 2020. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. There's no such thing. So I don't think that that's a reasonable, kind of goal to strive towards. However, I think that it's really important to make sure that you choose your hosting sooner rather than later. And then once you've got a couple podcasts recorded, edited, you can get them live on your hosting site, and then you can submit them to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, so you can get that going. And then it's just one less thing for you to worry about. So that is number 2 that I learned. So first one is batching your content, getting guests scheduled in advance, getting podcasts edited in advance. You want to make sure you have quite a few in your arsenal. This way when you launch, you're ready to go. And then you can just work on marketing and communicating that the episodes are live. And then number 2 is going to be getting your hosting ready sooner rather than later. I chose Libsyn. Shout out to Jessica Hurley for helping me choose my podcast host. I was thinking that one might be a really good fit, but her opinion just kind of put me over the edge, and I decided, yes, that's the right one to go to. It's inexpensive. Hey, Nicole, how are you? It's $15 a month, and then the really great thing about it is you have access to all these great analytics, so you can see who's listening to your podcast and where they are, and all that information is going to be really helpful for you as you continue to add more content to your podcast and grow your audience and potentially even monetize your podcast in the future. So number 3 is that you can't do it all. So I really thought, okay, I'm going to DIY this because I've DIY'd everything, for the most part, that I've ever done with my, I'm a self-taught publicist, a self-taught social media manager, a self-taught business owner. So I figured, okay, podcasting, self-taught as well. However, it's not that I wasn't able to figure out these details or figure out or how to, it wasn't that I was, excuse me, I'm just so excited. It wasn't a lack of knowledge. It was a lack of time and resources. There's only so much time in a day. I knew that committing to a podcast would be a sufficient time commitment. However, I just underestimated, so luckily I have a partner who already has some really great audio and video production skills. So my partner is my freelance podcast manager. He is editing my podcast for me and helping me to keep that kind of production load to a minimum. This way we don't get kind of stacked up and we've got a bunch of podcasts backloaded. So I think it's going to be really helpful to tap someone's shoulder and ask for help, whether it's a friend that you can trade with or it's someone that you can hire on a freelance basis, what have you. Identify which areas of the podcast that you are going to need some help with and, ask sooner rather than later, because you're just one person. And as amazing as you are, there's only so much time in a day. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I don't want you to end up putting this project on a back burner and end up starting, at a much later time. It's just really important to ask for help. So number 1, batch production. Number 2, decide on your host sooner rather than later and get that RSS feed submitted as soon as you can. That RSS feed is how your podcast is going to populate in Apple Podcasts, what have you, wherever people are getting their podcasts. So when you add a new episode, it gets added automatically because they have that RSS feed on the back end. And number 3 is realizing that you can't do it alone. And that's a good thing because you need to use your resources where your business needs you. So I am so excited for you to hopefully start your own podcast. Even if you're not interested in starting your own podcast right now, I think it's helpful to get some background knowledge because then you can be a better podcast guest. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are interested in becoming a guest on future podcasts. So, learn what you can and just do your best. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. You can also send me an email at hello@babecrafted.com. And please do go ahead and take a listen. The podcast episodes are live. We have an intro episode where you get to learn about me and my background. I've had many different lives before I started Babe Crafted. At one time, I wanted to own a event space and art gallery. I was interviewing musicians and artists. And then for a period of time, I worked for an alternative weekly newspaper. And then for a period of time, I worked for a restaurant group. And that was when I really cut my teeth on digital communications. So I have a lot of really great things to share, and I'm super excited to share what I know and then also get some feedback from you on what you might be interested in learning about. And then first and foremost, sharing the stories of women entrepreneurs that I know you're going to admire. Babe Behind the Brand was started with the goal in mind of having real conversations with successful women entrepreneurs so they could, inspire you to keep going on those tough days and then empower you with the tools you need to smash some goals and build your business, to better fit the vision that you have for it. So I'm super excited to really kick off this journey. Thank you so much for listening to my top 3 tips right now that I have for you, as far as, giving you some information you can use to start your podcast on the right foot. And let me know what you think about our episodes. The intro episode is live, and an episode with Sheila Vasky of Vienza Creations. And her mini workshop at the end of her episode is about finding your passion and then what to do once you figure out what it is you want to move forward with. And also, she's just got a really great story about how she went from being, tired and burnt out in the food and beverage industry into starting her giftable brand and business, Vienza. So I look forward to hearing what you think about that. Thanks for your time, and have a wonderful day and week. Stay boss. Thanks, ladies.